I am so excited for today's video. I have the brand new Natasha Denona Roxa palette. There's always so much hype when a new Natasha Denona palette launches, especially this one because we finally have a colorful, more purple leaning color story. We were definitely seeing quite a few nude palettes recently, so I'm excited for some color. So in this video, we're gonna do lots of swatches and comparisons. I'm gonna swatch out this entire palette, and then I'm also gonna be doing some comparison swatches to some other palettes that I've seen a lot of people talk about and want to see this compared to, like the Natasha Denona Retro palette, the Love palette. I want to compare some of the purpley shades from My Dream, and then also the Huda Beauty Rose Quartz palette. And then at the end of this video, after all of the swatches and comparisons, I'm going to do my very first eyeshadow tutorial with this palette. By the end of the video, you decide this palette is for you and you want to pick it up, you can use my code ANGELABRIGHT to save some money on Natasha Denona's website. I quickly wanted to note packaging wise, it is the same packaging as the Golden palette where it has a slight little wave right here on the top and it's just kind of a shiny metallic finish. It's now in purple and I think the shade is so pretty. Now I have already done some swatches of this palette for some short form content, which is why it looks a little swatched already. There is a new formula in this palette and that is for all of the matte shades. There are 8 matte shades in here and they are all this new silky matte formula is what they're calling it. I watched her Instagram story and she said that she made this new silky matte formula specifically for these purple shades because we all know that purple shades can be a little bit drier, sometimes show up a bit patchier on the eyes. So I'm very intrigued to see how this new matte formula is going to look and apply on the eyes. Let's get to swatching. I have a clean arm right here with nothing on it. Some people hate the way that I swatch my shadows in these videos, but I have to do heavy swatches so they show up on camera. And I'm starting with the shade Dixie. And this is a crystal sparkling warm pink with blue and purple specks. I'm definitely seeing that blue and purple shift in there. That one's actually so pretty. It's very sheer though. It's more of like a topper shade. Next is Jarconda, and this is the new silky matte formula. And this is a medium dark violet. Just picking up and feeling that shade, it does feel so smooth on my fingers. Next is Flutter, and this is a sparkling wet effect lilac pink. I do love the sparkling wet effect shadows from her. They're one of my favorite formulas. Next is Phoebe, and this is a silky matte light lilac. I'm gonna go over that one just one more time. It does look a little bit gray in the pan, but swatched out, I can definitely see that tiny bit of lilac undertone that it has. Next is Regal, and this is a metallic vintage rose. I saw a couple comments online saying that these 3 top shimmers right here looked really similar in the pan, but swatched out, they do look very different. This one is more sheer with that purple blue reflect. This one's a bit more of like a warmer pink, and this one's a bit more cool toned with that light rosiness in there. Moving on to Eclipse. And this is a silky matte deep purple. Wow, okay, I don't think I've ever had a purple shadow swatch out that well before. That just glided right on, and there's no patchiness at all. Very impressed with how this swatched out, wow. Next is Stargirl, and this is a sparkling foil duochrome pink with a bronze champagne shift. I'm definitely seeing that bit of a shift that this shade has, but being honest, these 2 shades look pretty similar. If I'm looking really closely at them, I can see the differences, but I wonder how these 2 would look on the eyes, because swatched out, they look kind of close. Next is this center shade Bolt, which I think is the first time that she has like mixed 2 shades together to kind of get this marble effect. You gotta swirl everything together. And this is a sparkling foiled graphic designed violet and silver. It's a really pretty shade. I definitely see the violet and the silver in there. This makes me want to use these 2 shades together. How gorgeous would that be? Next is a shade Heather, and this is a silky matte medium dusty coral rose. I'm gonna build that one up just a little bit. Again, this is that new silky matte formula and it really does feel like a silky matte. And then next is Cerise, and this is a silky matte medium dark muted fuchsia. All right, let's talk about these 2 shades really quick because it sounded like people weren't very happy that these shades were in a purple palette. Now again, I did watch Natasha Denona's story where she was swatching and kind of explaining all the shades, and she said that the reason why she put these 2 shades in here is to kind of break up the palette a little bit and give you more variety of the looks you could create. If you cover up those 2 shades, this whole palette does look pretty purple, but I agree how these shades do break everything up. But I also wish that there was more purple in this palette, like, I don't know, some more shades that would pair beautifully with this one. I guess I wanted more like blue-based purples in here. So personally, I probably could do without these 2 shades, but I understand why she put them in there. Next is Sweet Pea, and this is a silky matte light medium warm lilac. These mattes really do feel amazing when I swatch them out, wow. Next is Contour. Concord. And this is a sparkling foiled medium violet. Do one big swipe for this one. Ooh, that's so pretty and sparkly. Again, I love the sparkling foiled shadows. Then we have Velour, and this is a silky matte medium lilac. I'm gonna build this one up a little bit more down here. Are you thinking what I'm thinking right now? This one is a light medium warm lilac, while this one is a medium lilac. Did we really need both? They look so similar. This one's just like a tad deeper, is really the only difference there. The last two shades. This one is Brink, and this is a sparkling foiled pink. This one is so pretty. Very, very sparkly. And then the last shade is Orchid, and this is a silky matte medium purple. Okay, first impressions after swatching out this entire palette. I wish there was more purple. I'm definitely most drawn to this shade right here, and I wish there was more like it in this palette. I just don't think I'm gonna get a lot of use out of these two shades right here. Again, these two look similar, but I gotta say, these like foiled sparkling shimmers are very, very gorgeous. I am excited to use this palette on my eyes and see how everything shows up. I'm ready to do some comparisons now, so let's start with the Love palette. Whenever I'm doing these comparisons, I'm always looking at it with you guys for the first time to really get like my first impressions of the comparisons and differences. And Love was definitely the palette that people were like, I need to see that one compared to Roxa, so let's do it. Immediately, my eye goes to this Dream shade because I told you I was loving how this shade looks, and these do look very similar. But this formula, I believe, is her cream to powder formula, which I actually don't like. So I'm excited to have this shade in this new matte formula. Let's see any other similarities I'm seeing right off the bat. I'd say Heartbeat and Cerise. These two shimmers up here have a bit more warmth in it than this palette. I like this Trust shade a lot. See, I wish that this shade was in this palette. I honestly might just do that, pop that one in there because I could. We have Heart, which is more of a true red, so it's not too close to Cerise. Pure Love also looks like it could go in this palette easily. I'm interested to see how these two look next to each other. Ooh, and then Soul and Heather. Passion, I'm not seeing, and then yeah, we already talked about that. So let's do some comparison swatches and see these shades side by side. I need to get this shade out of the way, so I'm starting with Jacaranda, and I'm just gonna do that on the left side of my arm here. And then let's try Dream next to that. So like I said, I typically don't love this formula. Oh yeah. It's such like a sheer creamy formula. Shade-wise, it's definitely lighter. Out of these two shades, I definitely prefer that one. Next, I'm gonna do Cerise. And let's do Heartbeat next to that one. There's definitely more fuchsia in the Roxa side. Heartbeat has a lot more warmth to it. Let's do these two deeper shades. So again, this one's Eclipse, and let's do Commitment next to that. Commitment does have a bit of a shimmer in there. They actually do look somewhat close, but the formula is different, whereas this one is a true matte and this one's not. Again, out of these two shades, I do prefer the Roxa side. Next, I'm gonna do Orchid. I don't think these are similar shades, but I just want to swatch Trust next to that since it is one of the purpley shades in Love. The nice thing about the Natasha Denona midi palettes is that you can pop out the shadows, the little holes right there. You just pop like a little pin through it, and the shadow is magnetic, and you can just swap shadows within the palettes however you please. So like I said, after I use Roxa a few times, I might take out like Heather or something and just put Trust in there because I think this shade belongs in Roxa. I'm not going to swatch Heart just because, again, that one is a true red, and I already did a Cerise and Orchid. I kind of want to try these two shimmers. So this one is Brink, and then Pure Love. They're definitely not close shade-wise, but they both are really gorgeous shimmers. Let's try these two. So we have Heather and Soul. Okay, they're definitely giving me a very similar vibe. That's like the first shade that I'm like, oh yeah, that's a pretty good match. Looking at the shimmers, Blind is more of just like a true silver. There's not really a shade like that in Roxa. Maybe Dixie or Stargirl. Go backwards for this swatch. I'm gonna start with Blind. Let's just put Stargirl next to it for funsies. I personally prefer the Stargirl shade, and I like how shifty that shade is. Transparent, maybe Regal? Let's try that. After swatching all of these shimmers, I'm not very impressed by this Regal shade. It's kind of a little boring looking to me, honestly. Let's do Transparent. Those are both pretty boring shades from both palettes. Let's do another shimmer. I'm gonna do Flutter and Giving. Oh yeah, Giving has so much more peach in there, whereas this shade is a lot softer, more muted. I think that's all I have for similar shades between these two palettes, and swatched out, I don't think they're that similar. I can definitely see why a lot of us thought of the Love palette when we saw Roxa, especially with this shade and this one right here. But those were the first two shades that I swatched, and they're really not similar at all. Personally, the Love palette is one of my least favorite Natasha Denona color stories. I tend to only use this palette around Valentine's Day for like some of these pinky shades, but that's kind of it. So out of these two color stories, I definitely prefer the Roxa one. Okay, that is going to be it for the Love palette. Let's move on to the Retro palette. First of all, I do love the Retro palette. I think this is such a beautiful color story where it leans more muted. I think just looking at these two right away, like these shades really pop because they're just brighter shades, where this side is a bit softer. I definitely want to swatch out these two pink shades, maybe close to these guys. I might swatch out these more very muted purpley shades, but I feel like we're not going to see a lot of similarities. I'm going to go backwards here again. Let's do Glitz and Psychedelic. Glitz, Psychedelic. See, Psychedelic, I'm seeing a hint of those bluish reflex, so I want to swatch Dixie. Yeah, but so much more blue shows up with Dixie. And then let's do Flutter next to Glitz. Flutter definitely has more of a pink base to it than Glitz. Glitz kind of shifts from like a light yellowy gold to pink. Let's do Groove and Orchid. And Groove. Definitely not that similar. Now let's try Eclipse and Rebellion. Eclipse. Oh, and Rebellion is a cream shade too. Okay, see in the pan, Rebellion looked deeper, but that's just because it's a cream. Still not seeing any similarities. Let's try Concord and Swing. I'm just trying to swatch out the purpley shades in the Retro palette. So this is Concord and Swing. Yeah, a lot more muted. I kind of want to try Andy next to one of these more lilac shades. Actually, I wonder if that might be closer to Phoebe. Nope. Let's try Velour. Yeah, no, it's just definitely brighter compared to Andy. You're definitely getting two completely different color stories with these palettes. Again, this palette just leans way more muted, where this one has a couple brighter shades in it. That is it for the Retro palette. Next, I want to pull out the My Dream palette. Now, the Dream palette is one of my favorite Natasha Denona palettes. I believe it was my favorite palette of the year when it launched in 2023, I think. And there's just a few shades in here that I want to compare. It's really just these two shades right here, Instinct and Edgy, that are more purple in this palette. Because the rest of this palette does lean more neutral warm. I'm gonna start with the My Dream side. This is Instinct. Why is that the worst swatch I've ever done? This is not swatching out that great. And then let's do Edgy. I think Edgy is one of her cream to powder formulas as well, because it definitely feels like a cream to me right now. Let me try Orchid. I feel like that's gonna be the closest shade in this palette. I think Orchid is closer to Edgy. They're all just in that purple family. And that's kind of it. That's the only comparison I really wanted to see with the My Dream palette, because none of these shades are gonna look similar to this one. I'm gonna randomly jump into the Retro Glam palette because there's one shade in here that has the same name as a shade in the Roxa palette, and that's the shade Flutter. So we have Flutter from Roxa and Flutter from Retro Glam, and these are completely different shades. Let me just show you really quick. Again, Flutter from Roxa is a sparkling wet effect lilac pink. Flutter from Retro Glam is actually one of my favorite shades to use for highlighting like my inner corner. I'm just gonna do this. Yeah, they're not the same shade. Just wanted to point that out if you were like me and saw the same shade name and you're like, wait, are these the same? They're not. And then the last palette I want to do some comparisons with is the Huda Beauty Rose Quartz. I saw a lot of people online say that they thought Rose Quartz looked similar to Roxa. I didn't initially think that, so let's take a look, shall we? Okay, I can see a couple similarities here and why people might think that. Okay, I see it, I see it. Let's do swatches. First, I want to do Dixie and Moon Magic because they both have that bluish reflect. Dixie, Moon Magic. Okay, I can definitely see a similarity there. Moon Magic has a little bit more of a pink base to it, while Dixie, like I said, is a bit more sheer, but they both have that bluish reflect. I'm thinking either Flutter and Joy or maybe Self-Love. I might do both. Flutter, guess we'll just do both of them. So we got Joy. And then let me add Self-Love. I actually think Self Love might look kind of close to Regal. So let's add that one in. Regal. I'm shifting my arm. Those two do look pretty similar. But for Flutter and Joy, there is a bit of a difference there. Flutter is just a lot more sparkly, and this one is more of a shift, I'd say, kind of from like pink to peach, I guess. But if I wasn't being super picky, I would say that these three shades, like, they're pretty similar. Let's do Eclipse and Mantra. Yeah, Mantra is more of like a cool toned, grayish black, I'd say, where there is quite a bit of purple in Eclipse, but that is both of the darkest shades in each palette. Let's do some more shimmers. I don't think these are going to be similar, but let's do Stargirl and Blissful. Stargirl right here, and Blissful. Oh, I love this shade from this palette. Not similar, but both really gorgeous shimmer shades. I'd say that Blissful and Moon Magic are like my top two shimmers in this palette. I do want to swatch Cosmic Love up here. And I think we have to try that next to Concord. I'd say the undertones of those two shades are different, but they're both a really gorgeous purple, sparkly shimmer. Thank God there's nothing like Love Stone. I hate this cream shade. It's really gross. Okay, now I want to do these three pinky matte shades. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. Cherished, Happiness, and Serenity. These three shades look very, very soft. And then I think from Roxa, I want to go 1, 2, 3. So this is Phoebe, and this is Sweet Pea. And then last is Velour. So again, I think at first glance they do look pretty similar, but if I'm looking at the undertones, Sweet Pea and Velour both have that slightly bluish undertone to them. And to me, they just pop a little bit more than these two from Rose Quartz. So there definitely are more shadows in the Rose Quartz palette, but it does have a bit more variety to it, where you have these kind of more neutral shades right here, which are shades that I use quite a bit. This is tricky for me. Like I said, I don't really love these two shades in Roxa. I don't think I'm gonna get much use out of them. I would much rather have neutrally shades like these ones in Rose Quartz. So that kind of has me thinking, if you have the Rose Quartz palette and you're like me and you're just not loving these two more warmer shades, I don't know if you necessarily need the Roxa palette. I'm honestly a little shocked sitting here because, like I said, I didn't think that Rose Quartz looked similar to Roxa, but swatching it out, again, they're not like an exact dupe or anything for each other, but the vibes are just very similar, the type of color story that they have. So that is interesting. All right, so those are all the swatch comparisons that I wanted to do for this video. Now let's switch up angles, and I'm gonna do my first close-up eyeshadow tutorial with this new Roxa palette. All right, let's get started on my first eye look with this palette. I did already prime my eyes. I used the Rare Beauty eyeshadow primer, and I set that with the translucent powder. I'm gonna start with more of like a fluffy packing brush in the shade Velour, and I want to pack this shade throughout my entire crease. So I'm kind of starting in the center of my crease right here. I'm packing on that shadow, and then I'm kind of softening out the edges towards my outer crease out here, and then this inner crease area. And then I can also kind of do more of a back and forth motion with this brush. I did pick up a little bit more shadow to build this up. I want this to be nice and pigmented in my crease. Now on the same brush, I'm going to pick up Phoebe, and I kind of have this shade more on the tip of the brush, and I'm going to use this to soften out the edges of Velour. So I'm blending pretty much right below my brow just to smooth and soften everything out. And then I'm also bringing more Phoebe right in here into my inner crease. I'm still using the same brush. I'm going to pick up Orchid, and I'm going to press this shade pretty much on the outer half of my eyelid. And then once most of that shadow is on my eyelid, I'm gonna bring my brush up towards my crease to kind of blend everything together. I totally forgot that this is a new matte formula from Natasha, and so far I've used 3 matte shades, and they're blending out really, really nicely. Now I'm going to switch to a smaller pencil brush and take velour. I have that on the tip of my brush and I'm going to run that across my entire lower lash line. Then I'm going to take whatever shadow was left on this brush I was using earlier and just kind of use that to run across the lower lash line. There's definitely a bit of orchid left over on this brush. These mattes are looking really, really nice. Adding a tiny bit more velour. Now I have to take the purple shade that I've been most excited to use this whole video. I have that on my pencil brush and I'm going to add that to the very outer corner of my eye. I also want to mention too that I have gotten zero fallout so far with all of these purple matte shades. I'm also going to add a bit of this to the outer part of my lower lash line. Actually, I think I want this on my entire lower lash line. I just love this shade so much. Adding a little bit more to the very outer corner. I'm not trying to be dramatic, but this might be one of my favorite purple shadows I have ever used. Now I'm going back to the brush I started with more velour on it, and I'm just gonna use that to very softly blend around that deepest purple. I'm just kind of going back and forth between the previous shades I used to make sure everything looks nice and smooth. I'm feeling really good about these matte shades so far. It definitely is a pinkish leaning purple look though. Now I want to pop a shimmer or two on my lid. I think I'm going to do Dixie, so I'm going to take that on my finger and let's see how this will show up on the inner part of the lid. Picking up a little bit more and kind of bringing it towards the outer corner. And then I want to see if I take a little bit on my brush and kind of dust it into this inner crease area. That is so pretty, but I feel like I need something on the very center of my lid to kind of blend this shade into the deeper purple. Let's try Quartz. I'm going to take just a little bit of that on my finger, and I'm going to place that right in the center where Dixie is meeting these deeper matte purples. And then a little bit more Dixie on top of that. There we go. I like that gradient much better. Now I'm going to take the shade Eclipse on a little liner brush and I'm going to run that along the base of my lower lashes. Then I'm going to soften that out with my pencil brush and then a little bit of Eclipse on the outer part of my top lash line. And then taking a little bit of Stargirl and kind of popping that right in my inner corner, but also letting it go onto this inner lid. I'm just trying to play with as many shades as possible while still creating a really pretty look. I feel like I need a little bit more blending right on this outer area of my crease. So I'm going to take more velour and just kind of add that to the crease in a blending motion. There we go. Now I'm gonna go pop on some mascara and lashes. All right, mascara and lashes are on, and for my lashes, I used the Bright Lashes Daydream. The Bright Lashes is my lash brand, and I took this full lash Daydream and I cut it into a half lash, so it's just sitting right out there on the outer corner of my eye. I did also add a little bit of a black liner to my tight line and a tiny bit of a nude liner to my waterline. And here's the final close-up of this look. All right, both eyes are done, and here's the full look using the brand new Roxa palette. For my blushes, I kind of had a tricky time finding something that would work with these more cool tone purples, so I mixed two liquid blushes together. The first one is the Giorgio Armani Luminous Silk Blush in the shade 62, and then the second blush is the Saie Dew Blush in the shade Baby. Then on my lips, I'm wearing the Makeup Forever lip liner in the shade Endless Cacao with the Fenty Beauty Gloss Bomb Stix in the shade Blazed Donut. I think this eye look turned out so pretty. I was very impressed by the matte formula that new silky matte formula really is a silky matte. It's so easy to apply and blend out. And then the shimmers look stunning as usual. Now for my first impressions of this palette, I don't think this palette is for everyone. You definitely have to like pink leaning purple shades and also be okay with having these two kind of different warmer shades in the palette that will give you a variety of looks. I will definitely do another video with this palette very soon. I'll probably do either a 2 or 3 looks one palette where I'm going to show you even more looks that you can create with this. Again, if you do decide to buy this palette on Natasha Denona's website, my code ANGELABRIGHT will save you some money there. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching and don't forget to like and subscribe.